French seam. You've probably heard of them, and you may even have been a bit scared to try them, and that's why you're here. Today, we are going to sew one of the cleanest seams you have ever done in your life. French seams are perfect to use in unlined garments like blouses and skirts, which are made from sheer and delicate fabrics. French seams are also great to use on most projects made from woven fabrics to neaten up the seams, especially if you only have a sewing machine and not an overlocker. First of all, you need to know what seam allowance you are working with. And if you don't know what I mean by seam allowances, please check this link over here for my other video where I explain to you all about it. Now, there is a little bit maths involved, but I will walk you through it. I am going to use a standard 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, which is the standard for garment making. So I'm going to write down 5/8 of an inch on my paper. Because the area that we are going to sew to create the French seam needs to be sewn twice, I'm going to divide this number by 2. 5 divided by 2 is not going to give me a whole number, so I'm just going to round each of them off. I'm going to round one off to a 2 and the other one to a 3. So 5/8 of an inch divided by 2 is going to give me 2/8, and the other side is going to give me 3/8. We can simplify this a little bit more because 2/8 in reality is a quarter, and that's the measurement that we are going to be able to see either on our needle plate or on our rulers. On the other hand, 3/8 of an inch is also a measurement that we can see on our needle plate and on our rulers. So let's go with those. And now that we have worked out the seam allowances that we need to use, let's move on to our project. You are going to sew the fabric with the wrong sides together, and yes, you heard that right. Your sewing instincts may be screaming, but just ignore them for now. Place your fabric's wrong sides together, and the first seam allowance we are going to be using is a 1/4 inch because that's what we worked out earlier. On your needle plate, have a look at where your 1/4 inch mark is. I know that this one over here is my 1/4 inch mark. If you are unsure where yours is, just grab a ruler and measure a 1/4 inch from your needle. Place the raw edge of your fabric up against that 1/4 inch mark, and then just lower your needle into your fabric, press a foot down, and start sewing. Don't forget at the beginning and end of your stitches to backstitch so you can lock your stitches in place so they don't come undone. Now our first seam has been sewn with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Let's move on to the next step. Now grab your scissors and cut off half of the seam allowance. You don't want a bulky seam or loose thread sticking out of your next seam. Leave roughly about 1/8 of an inch of a seam allowance because if you cut too close to your threads, they may slip off the edge and then your seam is just going to become open. Now grab a hot iron and let's press the seam. Open up your fabric, and if you can manage, press your seam allowance open. If not, just press them to one side. No one is going to call the sewing police on you. Pressing your seams is really important because it helps your stitches melt into the fabric, it sets them, and it just keeps your project more professional looking. So try not to skip this step. Now we can fold our fabric's right sides together and press that seam flat. And now you have a nice flat seam ready for your next row of stitches. The seam allowance that is left to sew is the 3/8 of an inch that we calculated earlier. So now what you're going to do is you're going to align the edge of your previous seam with the 3/8 inch mark on your needle plate. And then just lower your needle into your fabric and sew all the way down. Now, if you open up your fabric, you will see on the other side, your seam has been completely enclosed. You have no raw edges, no little loose threads sticking out. It is just completely neat. The last thing you want to do is just give that seam a press. Normally, if you're sewing garments, you would press that seam towards the back, or just have a look at the instructions that was provided with your project and press the seams in the direction that it tells you to. And just like that, you have a French seam. It's clean, it's durable, and it gives a professional finish to your projects. This is just one of many ways to finish your seams. Next time I will show you another technique, so make sure that you subscribe to my channel. That's it from me today. Bye for now.